Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the message with the big homie Grand Marquis. We got a brand new guest with us today. Actually, she has a history degree and a minor in sociology. We would like to welcome Christina Carter. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing good. Welcome to our show, The Message. If you don't like the truth, or if you can't handle the truth, this might not be the program for you. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I was just going to say thank you for having me on.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. Tell us a bit about yourself, and about, your residency and a little bit about your education as a writer and historian.
Well, currently I live in Arizona outside of Phoenix. I've been here since 2020. I actually got here on the day of the election in 2020, so November 2nd. And then before that, I lived in Tennessee. And I was born in Florida, raised in Mississippi, so I've never left the South until 2020. So that's been a new experience. And then with my education, I actually first attended the Mississippi University for Women in Columbus, Mississippi. I had pretty much a full ride that I ended up walking away from for multiple reasons. That none of which had to do with the school, unfortunately. That would be a better excuse. But and then I graduated from Middle Tennessee State University in 2009 at like the worst time in history to graduate. Maybe until now, I guess we'll see. But I did originally go for history education, and then I ended up dropping the teaching part off because I just don't think I could handle it emotionally. And then I just stuck with history. I love history. I've always loved history. When I was a kid, all I ever wanted to do was dig up dinosaur bones, so I just stuck with what I loved. And then I also took a sociology class as one of my electives, and really enjoyed that as well. So I took a few more of those and got my minor, and that's that. So
all right, cool. Sounds good. So, what inspired you as a writer / historian?
Well, what inspired me as a writer is very different from what inspired me from a historian. I don't play with history too much in my book. It's set in like 2002 or 2003. The date's not actually in it, but you can gauge that from the technology and from some of the things that the characters are doing and saying. So I'll start with the history. That part's a little easier for me. Just like I said before, I've always been interested in history, the ancient world, learning about how people have lived before, and how kind of understanding how we got to where we are now. And that really did start with just simply a love of dinosaurs. And that's where I started, is I really wanted to be a paleontologist. And obviously, most people don't become what they want to be when they're 3 years old or 5 years old.
Absolutely.
So I kind of, was able to segue that into something that was a little more practical. Obviously, I don't work in a museum or anything. I would love to. That's incredibly hard to get into. I have tried, but just having a degree, I found in my professional adult life is incredibly important and helpful. To me, having a degree demonstrates that you have critical thinking skills. You learn how to write, you learn how to communicate your ideas. And part of that, especially when you're working on an academic level, is also being able to make an argument. So those are all skills that I learned in college that I've carried through my professional life. And I have seen the results of that. So with regards to writing, I've always been creative since I was very young. So much like the history, it's been there. I've always been drawing things. I wrote even from a very young age. As soon as I could write, I have been writing, but nothing that I was serious about until 2000. My mother had passed away Christmas Eve in 2000 of cancer.
Okay. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. So I was 14 years old. I was very angry for a lot of different reasons, not just because she died. There had been a lot of suffering. She had been through a lot in her life, and it ended when she was, I'm older than she was when she died now. So that's something that I've kind of like had to think about. And, she had 3 children, raising them by herself, and she died at like age 36. So, but that following year, I was trying to find something to do with that anger, and I set out to write a story and kill all of the characters, which I did. And initially, I did do that. There is a version of that somewhere, but then as time went on, I became, you grieve. You go through that process of coming to terms with the thing that has happened. It never stops hurting, but you get to a point where you can reframe it in a more positive way, and its impact and how you interact with the world. So I had, going through that process, and I got attached to these characters I had written. Like, so the first time I wrote something and I was like serious about it.
Gotcha.
It's fine for writing for fun. I don't have a problem with that. I do maintain, and Sergio, my partner, who you also know, have a professional relationship with. He's heard me say this time and time again: real art comes from pain.
Yeah.
And so that is the lesson that I learned at that time.
Yeah, it's almost like in the art world, or whatever you do, or whatever your profession is, it seems like you do your best work, dealing with pain, or if you're at a downward spiral at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the most incredible work comes out of that.
Yeah, it comes from those difficult experiences, because in those difficult experiences we experience not only pain, but we, obviously most often fear and conflict. And that's part of when we're talking about writing or filmmaking or just telling any kind of story. That's what makes a more interesting story, is conflict. And you have to have experienced conflict in your life, whether that was an emotional or, outside of you, to be able to translate that into something like, telling a story. And that's kind of how I feel about that. And that's where I was with that when I started, taking my writing a little more seriously, even though I didn't even publish for the first time until last year. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, okay, you have a special. This book is very special to you, and it means a lot to you. And the actual name of the book, and you wrote this book and you published this book, and it's entitled The Unmaker. Yeah, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And just give us a brief preface storyline about what The Unmaker is about.
So my elevator pitch, I've been working on it, of course, because now that's out, I have to market it. But basically, it's a book about these kids that get drawn into a curse unwillingly. It involves a book itself that is actually a play, that is actually a magical spell. And then, it has it gets even more complex from there, and what the spell has to do with, and how these kids got drawn into it and everything. And that's what it's about. On a surface level, for me, obviously it is me working through my grief, and these characters. None of these characters represent me as a whole. So I do want to be clear with that. I don't really do insert characters, but I feel like some of their parts of me. These characters take different aspects of me, and they kind of personify that so that I can understand my own emotions and my own feelings better.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's sounds like it's a very, very, very well thought out project that you worked on, and it seems that you put a lot of creativity into it. Now I have a question. In association, with writers and authors and just creative people in general that deal with the book world, what are your thoughts on the president dismantling the libraries, as far as like federal funding?
That makes me incredibly angry. Everything that man does makes me incredibly angry. That's just a very, as a historian, in 2024, I was terrified, and my fears are now coming to fruition. And so I was right to be terrified by the things that we see are happening. They want an uneducated populace. So they're going to defund the libraries. They're going to destroy the Department of Education. They're going to undermine everything as far as, access for poorer people to, enrich themselves. Mm-hmm. It's another form of disenfranchisement. And we've seen that in history time and time again, but the one, of course, that the comparison everyone's making is Hitler. It's Germany. They're burning books. They're banning them. They're not burning them yet, but it's coming.
Right.
Like these things, So if it wasn't for the library when I was a kid, there was a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have had access to. I checked out books from the library all the time. And I know for a lot of kids that I have known in my life, and especially other writers and things, they like to go there, to be around books, to write. As a kid, it's a safe place for you to go and spend time. You're not in danger. You can go there and you can stay there. No one's going to throw you out. You can just, and it gives you access to a whole world that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So, especially for poorer kids in rural areas and in inner city areas, that's horrible. So.
Right. And for those who are listening, Doge have used similar EOs to dismantle other federal agencies, but this in particular one is a executive order that President Trump targeted the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And this executive order states that they must be reduced to its statutory functions, and it also requires non-statutory components and functions which shall be eliminated to the maximum extent. And I just found that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right, moving on. My next question is, what is your take on the DIE policy?
Like I said, everything that man does makes me angry, and it has since he announced his presidential run. So 2016, I'm going to back up just a little bit, because again, as a historian, it's like there's been a few times in history. I'm almost 40 now, but even when I was in high school, as a 17, 18-year-old child in high school, I was like, I could see the recession that was coming. Like I knew that was coming. As soon as the housing crash started happening, I wasn't really surprised. And then we get to 2016 again. I'm sitting, people treated him like a buffoon, especially on the left or progressives.
Right.
They didn't take him seriously, and they made jokes. And the whole time I was going, this is not funny. This is not funny. This should have been over when he was trying to grab women's genitalia and making fun of special needs people.
I remember
and
that.
when it wasn't, that's when I started to worry. I was like, this would have ended anybody else's candidacy. Absolutely. Either one of those scandals, much less both of them. So yeah, it's just I'm sorry, what was the original question? I got kind of on my tangent there.
No. It's just asking, what was
the
your
DEI.
DEI policy, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, just that whole, he wanted to do these things in his first term, but there was enough resistance, and inside of Congress and the checks and balances were working. We still had people on the Supreme Court. It wasn't stacked. But now he came in and he's roughshod, and it's happening so fast. And the DEI stuff is absolutely you can't erase people.
Yeah.
They're erasing people. They erased the names of Native American, African American, Black, and women from the Arlington Cemetery records. They're erasing documents with words in the Pentagon, and the Department of Defense. The Enola Gay. They deleted a picture of the Enola Gay. That is one of the planes that dropped one of the bombs. That is ignorance on a level I can't even comprehend. I'm not a genius. I do not claim to be a genius, but I'm smart enough to know how dumb I am, and I'm smarter than all of them.
Well, as far as I know, Black and brown, or some refer as African Americans, they're last on the list as far as DEI. You can do the research. And for those who don't know much about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a broad term that is not defined, in the title for Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it prohibits employment discrimination based on protected characteristics such as race and sex, if you didn't know. But these things are very interesting, and I like to hear what most people think about these kind of things that they're trying to put into perspective, as far as policy, etc.
Yes.
So
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, it's all good. So, but moving along. So nowadays, we got a lot of other things that's going on globally, with a lot of federal workers losing their jobs, and just a lot of people around the world losing their jobs in general. During this time, and I just want to send a shout out to those people who have either been furloughed or have lost their jobs, to keep your head up. Keep your head up. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to ask, what is your view on the freeze and the disruption of the current job market? Because there's somewhat of a freeze at this point within the job market, and the unemployment rate decreased slightly from 4.1% to 4.0% between December of last year in 2024 and the current state of in January of 2025. The unemployment rate remains historically low compared to the median rate of 5.0% observed over the last 20 years. And I just wanted to, get your take on, what do you think about these things taking place which is causing people to like lose a lot of stuff. Lose the jobs. And it's actually hurting their families. It's actually destroying a lot of things at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't claim to be an economist, so I'll just make that clear. So as far as like how the job market actually looks and everything is like, for me, I've been steadily employed since I graduated from college in 2009. I was with the same company for 13 years, and then I've transitioned to a new company, and I'm in a very stable company and a stable position. It doesn't have anything to do with my degree, but I pay my bills.
Gotcha.
So I do worry though. About there's plenty of people in my life that have lost their jobs in the last few years, or have had to jump from job to job because it's not stable enough, either because they keep laying people off or they're not paying enough. That's the biggest problem I see. Yes, we have historic unemployment lows right now, but what are the types of jobs that are being created? Because there's so many people that have to have 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So that, I think the real question is like, okay, it's great we have historically low unemployment, but what are we not seeing with that? Because people are still suffering.
Right.
That's a big thing. The big debate over the last several years, especially, is when minimum wage hasn't gone up since I was in college.
Right.
And people aren't being paid a living wage. When you see the memes online and stuff, it's like you should be able to work 40 hours a week and be able to afford rent and your basic needs. I 100% agree with that. But I don't necessarily think that the jobs that are out there right now are supplying that. And with the deregulation that's going to continue to happen for the time being, at least, that's not going to improve. In fact, they're trying to roll back. They're going to try to destroy what's left of unions. They're going to roll back workers' protections. They've already done that to an extent with the DEI executive order,
right.
Because now those folks are, and I say those folks, I am a woman, and I am a queer woman on top of that. So, so I said this when Sergio and I, again, my partner, that when we were having dinner last night, I said, if you don't have a dick, and aren't a white man under 35, then you're DEI, or not 35, but 55, I think is what I said. But yeah, you're DEI. Like if you're an old person, even if you're a white dude, you're still suffering right now. And I deal with lots of seniors in my day-to-day job. So I do have conversations, even brief ones about these sort of things when we're trying to do what we need to do. And they're like, well, I'm on a fixed income, these people are all of us are going to suffer.
Yeah.
And I think the job market right now looks great, but I also think it's an inherited job market from the former president. I think it's going to get bad, and I think it's going to get bad fast.
Yeah, I think it's already bad. It's like I said, it's a lot of misinformation that's out there too, as far as like I talk to a lot of people that look for jobs, and I know a lot of job recruiters, and I speak with them, and the pay rates are just unbelievable of how much they want to pay some of these people to come in and work for these companies and institutions. And it's totally insane. But I don't know, maybe better for other people in different places, but it's looking like crap to me, and this whole economy is crap. And I think that everybody is taking a hit from it. No matter if you're just a regular W-2, even the independent people that 1099, everybody's completely taking a hit from this situation and this current disruption of the job market. And Yeah, what can you say? Yeah, also, you're now listening to The Message with the big homie Grand Marquis, and this audiocast episode is brought to you by Margarita Pizza, Pasta, and More. If you ever visit the Nashville area, you can check out Margarita Pizza, Pasta, and More at www.margaritapizza.com at 1128 Murfreesboro Pike, Nashville, Tennessee 37217. They got some of the best pizza in the city. Go check them out. Family owned and operated. Yeah, so on to my next question. I want to ask you this question and give me the best answer that you can give me with this particular question. And it's an important question. I want to ask you, born as a Caucasian woman here in North America, what exactly goes through your mind while residing in a place, especially the U.S., that systematically promotes and highlights terminology like white privilege or Western supremacy?
Yeah, with that, there's a theme. Makes me mad. Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this. So as I stated, I was raised in the South, in deep South, where, Mississippi is Mississippi. And I was raised, my family is, they're not hardcore racists. I love them, but I experienced that growing up, and I was never that way deep down. It was something that I realized about myself very young, that I thought it was very stupid that we drew these lines, especially when you're a little kid. You don't care. You're just friends with people. You don't care. I played with little black kids. I had one of my best friends, and even I had a Latina best friend when I was in elementary school, and I didn't understand that coming from these older generations, and so, but it was in me. So it was something that as I grew older, it was something I became more and more self-aware about. These things that we say when we're raised a certain way, or these things that we do, that when I realized, I was like, I'm not meaning to be this way. I started to self-correct. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I have this thought in my head. We know this is a dumb thought. This is a thought that comes deep from my subconscious, and it can go back there. And so that's something that I have worked on throughout my life as a white woman. I am very aware of my privilege as a white woman, in particular because I get told very often that I look younger than my age. And so it's like, that does, I do know that gives me privilege. And I do work to be aware of that, and I do work to not manipulate that. Just as a with the whole white supremacy thing and all of that, again, I wasn't ever exposed directly to like the KKK or anything like that. My family wasn't like in that, but they would say things like, oh yeah, that family down there, they're the good ones.
Right.
So it's not great. It's not great.
I'll say this, that a lot of people don't realize that there is a difference between racism and prejudice. Those are two different things.
Yes. Yeah, sociologically speaking, you are absolutely 100% correct.
And what I mean by that is, a lot of people freely use the term, if somebody does something derogative towards another person that doesn't look like them, or if a white person does something derogatory, they'll say he or she is racist. In most cases, that is not true, because the word that you would want to refer to would be prejudice. Mm-hmm. Because in order to be racist, you have to be somewhat of an elite caliber.
Exactly.
Like the people that serve us food at the grocery stores every day, Or let me give you an example. Kind of like the Michigan deal when the water turned brown. And they turned the water brown in a particular area and neighborhood, which was predominantly black and brown people. So anytime that you have a structure that can turn your water brown and disrupt your water system and do little or nothing to do anything about it, that's what you would call racist, because they have the power structure to do those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody just come up to you and say, I don't like you because of your skin color, because of you're black or brown or whatever, that's more of prejudice. And a lot of people get that confused. They really do. They get that confused, and I just wanted to make that clear. So if you just pay attention, there is a difference between racism and prejudice. Racism is kind of an elite race to the top. Like I said, if they can control your food, they can control your everyday living, and they can turn your world upside down, that's racist. But somebody being another ethnicity and they don't like the other ethnicity, or don't like the brown, the wonderful brown skin or the black skin of a black man or a black woman, that's considerably prejudice. And I'll let you continue to elaborate on that.
Oh yeah, you're fine. But yeah, that's really all I was saying is, I've never bought into any of that. Even from a very young age, I realized that about myself. That I wasn't, and I've made an effort not to be that way, despite the environment that I was raised in. And I've met many other people, especially in Nashville. Nashville, of course, is a blue area. Mm-hmm. But it was nice. It was refreshing when I moved to Nashville, and I worked in the mall, and I saw lots of interracial couples, and I met other people. I was like, okay, so I'm not alone with this. I'm not the only one who realizes that it's dumb. Race is any of that only has consequences because we allow it to, and people die because of it. And it's one of the most, you want to talk about one of the most arbitrary separations in all of life, then that's it. Because it doesn't, we're all human. We are all human. We all just look a little different, and that's okay. Diversity is wonderful. Diversity enriches us. With that, it's like I made an effort with that, and then I was raised incredibly religious. I know we said we weren't going to talk about. I'm not going to go that deep into it, but when I got to the Mississippi University for Women, it was an old school. It's a small school. On its face, it's very conservative, but it was actually very LGBT. It was my first real exposure to people being out in the open, just seeing men hold hands, and I made a lot of friends that were, that weren't cis or weren't straight. And so it's about exposure, and it's about being open-minded. And a lot of that happens when you get these white supremacist people who are former, it's just because they sat down one day and had a conversation with someone who they thought they hated. It could be that simple. It's just ignorance. That's all it is. It's just ignorance. And for the people at the top, they may not be ignorant, but they're greedy. And that's just as bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I'm glad that you elaborated on that, and I appreciate that. Moving on to the next question. Do you think social media has mentally conditioned and distorted the majority of the world's population into stupidity?
Absolutely. One of the things that I like to say when I'm talking about this subject or adjacent to the subject is I grew up with the internet, not on the internet. I grew up at a time when it was the wild, wild west. We had, we had a lot of creative freedom. There was a lot of different ways to experiment with the internet and to do things on the internet. There were also pedophiles in the Yahoo chat rooms. I will grant you that. But we got to this point, at some point, I think maybe in the mid 2000s, after the internet had been around for, a decade, where we were all had access to it. It's the anonymity, I think. That is the problem. Because you can go on the internet and you can be, these aren't real people. These are, so you get all this ugliness, especially on social media, especially when it's political, because you don't see this other individual that you're ranting at or insulting or whatever. You don't see them as a person. You already don't think of them as a person because they're the enemy. They're the other political party, or they don't agree with your opinion on a video game or a movie or whatever. And you don't see them as a real person. And that has certainly contributed to a breakdown in communication. Within humanity. We see this in Gen Z and how they interact and how they communicate. That's not bashing Gen Z. I'm just saying that it is something I have noticed.
Speak your mind. It's all
good. It's like I'm not a generationalist. I'm either, I don't. Again, those are arbitrary lines. We've already established that we've got, what is it, like a generation, was it alpha or something? They're not even done being born. I don't understand how you would do that. But anyway, so yes, I think it has contributed because there's been this breakdown in communication, and there's all this meme speak. We don't actually communicate. We just fire memes at each other. And I think there's a place for that. I share memes with my friends. I post memes on social media, but I also can have a conversation such as what we're having right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I never thought, and I'm a little bit throwback. I come back probably a little farther than you. I never thought that I'll see actual people beefing behind some sort of a screen or a computer screen. Beefing with each other, sending videos of, I just never thought that I would see that. I come from an era to where when I was in school, I think the only particular area that had internet service was probably technically the principal office, or either maybe a guidance counselor's office or something like that. And they had the startups, like the old school IMB screens, with the numerals in the letters were like green and the screen was green. Otherwise, it was like real life. We faced everything in real life. We didn't video nothing or do any of that in my era or whatnot. Everything was solid, just complete real life. If you had something to say to somebody to express yourself, you just have to go pull up, or you just have to meet that person.
Yeah,
you wouldn't be on live talking about, I'm about to do this and I'm about to pull up and I'm about to do that. Nah, you'll have to actually, find out where this person lives at, or either just see this person in public and be like, hey, now what was that you was talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So and I also think that it's this complete programming. I think that we all bought into social media, starting with Facebook and some of the older accounts. And I think that it's kind of a project, to see how humans would react. If you just think about when Facebook first started, you would have to, give your information, your name, your birthday, your address to create an account, and you're literally just handing over your information. And so as Facebook got bigger, if you just really think about it, at first there wasn't no emojis. And then later on down the line, the emojis came in, and that's like in reference to like how you feeling for the day or something like that. So you can like hit the emoji based on how you feel or how the vibes are. And it's just kind of like, to me, my personal opinion, complete programming and mind control. And now over the years, it's gotten to the point where, people are killing each other online now. You know what I'm saying? And you want to watch me kill somebody? You know what I'm saying? That type of vibe, man. So I just think it's complete programming, and it has absolutely done a lot of damage to the mental. And people already, and humans already, they have mental conditions, and that's not making it better. That's like increasing the intensity of, if you have a mental condition to the utmost level, to drive you to do something that you probably shouldn't do, or probably will regret once you do it.
Right.
And that's my take on that. But before we get out of here, I also want to ask you this question. I think this question is another important question, and it's a question that everybody should think about every now and then, in my opinion. How do you view the United States 5 years from now, from where it is right now in 2025?
I don't have a lot of high hopes for our country surviving this and being remotely the same. I do worry that, he's trying to run for a third term. They're trying to create this loophole. And I don't think we're going to make it 4 years. If things continue the way that they are continuing now and the way things are unraveling, we're going to have civil war. We're also going to have a lot of people die needlessly, because we're not going to have weather alerts. We're not going to have, the warnings coming from the FDA, the CDC. People are going to die. A lot of people are going to die.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know what type of country would be left in 5 years. Personally, for me, I am considering leaving the country in the near future. I don't feel safe. As a, even I'm white. Yeah, sure. But I'm a woman. I'm a woman who, of my rights being, on the line. Some of them have been taken away in Arizona. We've fought really hard to get them back. I am, of course, referring to the right to abortion. It is health care. For instance, I'm using a birth control right now that if I was to get pregnant, it would be ectopic, which means I would have to have an abortion or I would die. And I have to have this birth control because I have a medical condition that requires me to have this. So this is all between me and my doctor. This doesn't have anything to do with the Supreme Court. This doesn't have any. So, so we're gonna see people suffer with that. And I just don't know if our democracy can survive this. This has shown us how fragile the social contract that we've created using the Constitution is.
Yeah.
And how easy it can be manipulated and corrupted.
Yeah.
It's honestly really terrifying. And I think the only way this ends, and the only way we have a country in 5 years, is through violence. I think this ends in violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely been corrupted from day one, probably before me and you ever got here. Honestly, I think that, as a collective, and I'm speaking about the people, of this place. As a collective, we do have the power to turn things around against the forces that be. But it's a force to be reckoned with. Don't get it twisted. But we do have the power to turn things around. But I think with the weapons that they're using and the things that they're utilizing against man and womankind, if we don't do something, fast, then I think this place is going to hell in a handbasket.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you as far as like, looking towards another place to land. Me myself, I'm actually in the midst of looking at different places on the continent myself. But we do have the potential to do it. But it just looks like everybody is in la la land at the moment, and just allowing things to take place. And I don't think nobody really wants to turn it around. Like you said, I think it's just we're gonna go all in, and that's gonna be the end of it. But at the end of the day, whenever it does take place, I just hope I'm not here. You know what I'm saying?
Same.
You know
it's like I saw, last year I was like, okay, if he does any of the things that he is claiming he's going to do, and so there was a recent poll that was like, that I heard about on another podcast that I like to listen to, and they were talking about, if you came up to me on the street as a pollster and asked me if the president is doing the things that he said he was going to do, I would have to say yes. It doesn't make them any less terrible, and it's like I couldn't argue with that. He said he was going to dismantle the Department of Education. They said they were going to deport everybody who wasn't white. And now they're detaining people who are white. So it's insanity, and it's cruelty for the sake of it. And I think that is the most disturbing thing about all of this. It's just evil.
So much for the American dream.
Well, what George Carlin said, it's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Absolutely. So I don't know, man. It's just all in a matter of time. But at the end of the day, there is a higher power. And like I said, as humans on this planet, we do have the potential and the power to actually turn things around if we all come together as a collective and put our mind to it. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
May the best force win.
Well, there's more of us. That's the thing that I try to remind myself every day. And I do see people out there, they're fighting, they're in the town halls, they're on the streets, they're at the Capitol. I know at least one person in the government who's fighting from the inside. So that all gives me hope. And when there's to do outside of calling my representatives or sending letters, I will fight. I've fought before. I've been tear gassed before. So I will do what I have to do because I'm not going to lay down and let fascism win. So
I hear that. Now, before we get out of here, Christina, do you have a place to where if someone's interested into checking out the book that you wrote and published entitled The Unmaker, where could they go get that at?
Well, that's available on Amazon for now. That is something that I am reconsidering as well. But it is the largest platform. There's a reason why they're as large as they are. But you can find it on Amazon. It is available in hardback, paperback, and Kindle versions. If you would like to, I'm not super active, but I do have an author page on Facebook under my pen name, Chris C. Amrault. Amrault is Amirault. So you can find me there. I'm hoping to do a little more to be promoting there, and I'll probably share this interview there as well. So, but that's where you can find me.
All right, nice. Yeah, we'd like to thank today's special guest, Christina Carter, for being with us on The Message with the big homie Grand Marquis, where we give out highly constructive conversations. And once again, if you can't handle the truth, or if you don't like the truth, then this ain't the program for you. Y'all be sure to tune in. Until next time, salute.